Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Atika Tajdar from Department of Geography, Jamia Millia Islamia. Today we will discuss about biogeochemical cycles. The learning objectives are to define biogeochemical cycles, understand significant feature and importance of biogeochemical cycles, explain the mechanism of biogeochemical cycles, have a clear understanding about the hydrological cycle, carbon cycle, oxygen cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle and sulphur cycle. Living organisms from viruses, bacteria to plants and animals requires various kind of chemical elements such as carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulphur and phosphorus for their growth and life processes. The absorption and utilization of such elements by organism is compensated by their recycling and regeneration back into the environment. The cyclic path of these elements from environment to organism and then into environment are called biogeochemical cycles. In other words, the organic and inorganic substances of the biosphere like various gases from atmosphere, chemical elements from lithosphere and water from hydrosphere move reversibly through various closed system or cycle in such a way that total mass of these substances remain almost the same, and these substances are always available for use by the biotic communities. This circulation of the various elements in the cyclic manner is termed as biogeochemical cycle. These cycles are called biogeochemical cycle because they include a variety of biological, geological and chemical processes. The first part of the word bio involves biological organisms like bacteria, plant and animals. The next part of the word geo involves geological processes like weathering of rocks. The last part of the word indicates chemical processes such as formation of molecule. Significant feature of biogeochemical cycle. Biogeochemical cycles are pathways by which nutrients flow between the biotic and the abiotic compartment of the earth. The abiotic portion of the earth include the lithosphere, geological compartment and the hydrosphere, while biotic components include flora and fauna. Ecosystems survive due to biogeochemical cycles. Many of the nutrients elements on which living things depend, such as carbon, nitrogen and phosphorus, are in constant circulation. Essential elements are often stored in reservoirs, where they can be taken out of circulation for years. For example, coal is the reservoir for carbon. Human can affect biogeochemical cycles. Human extract carbon and nitrogen for the geosphere and use them for energy and fertilizer. This has increased the amount of these elements in circulation, which has detrimental effect on ecosystem. Importance of biogeochemical cycle. An ecosystem survives by combination of energy flow and matter recycling. That's why biogeochemical cycles are important in following ways. Biogeochemical cycles are a form of natural cycling that allows the continuous survival of ecosystem. Biogeochemical cycles are pathways by which nutrients flow between the abiotic and biotic compartment of the earth. Biogeochemical cycle regulate the elements necessary for life on earth by cycling them through the biological and physical aspect of the earth. Mechanism of biogeochemical cycles. Various elements of the atmosphere, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon and nitrogen, and of lithosphere, potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus are stored into soil. Energy is responsible for the flow of these elements in the biosphere. These elements of the atmosphere are brought to the soil through the precipitation, while lithospheric elements are made available to soil due to weathering and erosion of rocks. The elements are taken up by plants in solution form through the process of root osmosis. These The plant then converts these elements into such form which are easily used in development of plant tissues and plant growth by photosynthesis. Thus, these elements or nutrients pass into various components of the biotic community through the process termed as biogeochemical cycles. In this diagram, a very simple form of biogeochemical cycle is shown. Here, we can see that inorganic element like carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, sulphur, phosphorus, etc. are used by producers, example green plants, and then the nutrients incorporated into plants are further by consumer. Further nutrients from consumer are released into atmosphere through decomposer, and energy is required for each process shown by yellow arrows and lost to the atmosphere shown by red arrows. Type of biogeochemical cycle. Biogeochemical cycle is circulating or repeatable pathway by which an element moves through both the biotic, biosphere and abiotic lithosphere, atmosphere and hydrosphere component of Earth. Biogeochemical cycles are basically of two types. The first one is gaseous cycle. In gaseous cycle, the elements have a main reservoir in the gaseous phase and the reservoir pool is the atmosphere or water. The biogenetic material involved in circulation pass through a gaseous phase before completing the cycle. Example carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, oxygen cycle. The second one is sedimentary cycle. In sedimentary cycles, the element main reservoir pool is lithosphere and the biogenetic material involved in circulation are non-gaseous. The sedimentary cycles are generally very slow as the element may get locked up in rock and go out of circulation for a long period. Example sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle. Let us discuss major biogeochemical cycle. Water cycle or hydrological cycle. Water is the basis of all the earth process. In both liquid and frozen form, it covers approximately 75% of the earth's surface. The human body is more than half water and human cells are more than 70% water. Thus, most land animal needs a supply of fresh water to survive. However, when examining the stores of water on earth, 97.5% of it is non-potable salt water and only 2.5% is the fresh water. Of the remaining water, about 99% is locked underground as water or as ice. And almost 1% of fresh water is easily accessible from lakes or rivers. Many living things such as plant, animal and fungi are dependent on the small amount of fresh surface water supply, a lack of which can have massive effect on ecosystem dynamics. The amount of water in the atmosphere is only enough to supply the needs of the earth for about 10 days. Because of the limited supply of water on the earth, there must be a constant interchange of water between the atmosphere and the surface of the planet. Aided by the energy from the sun and the force of the gravity, water moves in an endless cycle from the oceans to the atmosphere and back to the oceans again. This circulation is known as hydrological or water cycle. Water cycling is extremely important to ecosystem dynamics. Water has a major influence on climate and thus on the environment of ecosystem. A step of water cycle. The water cycle at global scale involves the following step. Evaporation. Evaporation is the process by which oceanic water changes from liquid to gaseous state. Evapotranspiration. In general, evapotranspiration is the sum of evaporation and transpiration. Evapotranspiration is defined as the water loss to the atmosphere from the ground surface, evaporation from the capillary fringe of the groundwater table, and the transpiration of groundwater by plants whose root tap the capillary fringe of the groundwater table. Condensation. Condensation is a process in which water vapor in the air is changed into liquid water. Condensation is responsible for the formation of clouds. Precipitation. Precipitation is the water released from clouds in the form of rain, freezing rain, sleet, snow or hail. It is the primary connection in the water cycle that provides for the delivery of atmospheric water to the earth. Most precipitation falls as rain. Infiltration. Infiltration is the process by which water on the ground surface enters into the soil. Some water that infiltrates will remain in the shallow soil layer where it will gradually move through the soil and might enter a river by seepage into the river bank. Some of the water may infiltrate deeper, recharging groundwater aquifers. Runoff. Runoff can be described as the part of the water cycle that flow over land as surface. Mechanism of water cycle. Oceanic water is heated by insolation and thus a small fraction of water is transformed into gaseous form. Water is also transformed into vapor from groundwater and plant by the process of evapotranspiration. This moisture is transported across the ocean and over the continent by atmospheric circulation or winds. The air is cooled because of its ascent and moisture and result in formation of cloud, fog and dew. On further cooling, precipitation occur in the form of rainfall or snowfall over the ocean and continents. Some precipitation fall directly in the stream of lakes known as direct fall, while the proportion reaches to ground directly as through fall. The portion of rainfall reaches the ground surface flow as surface runoff and reaches to various water bodies. Some portion of surface water infiltrate through the soil. Some of the infiltrated water will remain in the shallow soil layer where it will gradually move through the soil and might enter a river by seepage into the river bank. Some of the water may infiltrate deeper, recharging groundwater aquifers. Importance of water cycle. Water cycle is very important mechanism for the various biological process in this biosphere because no life is possible without water. Water cycle carries fresh water to people, animal and plant all around the world. It also transports things like nutrients, pathogens and sediments in and out of aquatic ecosystems. Rain and surface runoff are main ways in which minerals such as carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus and sulphur are cycled from land to water and then water to land. Carbon cycle. Carbon is important for all life on earth. All living things are made up of carbon. Carbon is produced by both natural and human-made sources. Natural sources. Atmosphere. Carbon is found in the atmosphere mostly as carbon dioxide. Animal and plant respiration plant carbon into the atmosphere. Lithosphere. Carbon is found in the lithosphere in the form of carbonate rocks. Carbonate rock came from ancient marine plankton that sunk to the bottom of the ocean hundreds of millions of years ago that were then exposed to heat and pressure. Carbon is also found in fossil fuels such as petroleum, coal and natural gas. Carbon is also found in soil from dead and decaying animal and animal waste. Hydrosphere. Carbon is found in the hydrosphere dissolved in ocean water and lakes. Carbon is used by many organisms to produce shells. Marine plants use carbon for photosynthesis. The organic matter that is produced becomes food in aquatic ecosystem. Biosphere. Carbon is found in the biosphere stored in plant and trees. Plants use carbon dioxide from atmosphere to make the building block of food during photosynthesis. Anthropogenic sources. Deforestation. After deforestation, plants are not available to remove carbon dioxide from the air. Thus, deforestation results in extra carbon dioxide placed in the atmosphere. Wood burning. When wood is burned, the carbon that is stored in the trees convert into carbon dioxide and enter into the atmosphere. Combustion of fossil fuels. When fossil fuels are extracted from the ground and burned for energy at power plant, the burning of fossil fuels is called combustion, which release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Step of carbon cycle. Carbon cycle in the atmosphere. Carbon cycle in the biosphere involve following step. Carbon enter the atmosphere as carbon dioxide from respiration by plants. Carbon enter the atmosphere as carbon dioxide from respiration by animal and combustion of fuels. Carbon dioxide is absorbed by producer and converted into carbohydrates by process called photosynthesis. Animal consume the plant passing the carbon compounds along the food chain. Most of the carbon they consume is exhaled as carbon dioxide formed during respiration. After the death of animal and plant, they are eaten by decomposer and the carbon in their bodies is released to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. In some condition, decomposition is blocked. The plant and animal material may then be available as fossil fuel in the future of combustion. Nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is very important for all life form in the biosphere because it is an essential makeup. Nitrogen is very important for all life form in the biosphere because it is an essential part of the amino acid which make up proteins. Although nitrogen constitutes the largest proportion of atmospheric gases by volume, but living organisms cannot use nitrogen directly, rather they obtain nitrogen in the form of ammonia salts and nitrates. Sources of nitrogen. Natural sources of nitrogen include some of the nitrogen in the atmosphere, in-stream sources like salmon carcasses and litter fall, and vegetation from nitrogen fixing plants. Nitrogen is also a byproduct of many natural biogeochemical processes that occur in watershed, rivers and streams, such as decomposition of plants and organisms. Step of nitrogen cycle. In general, the nitrogen cycle has 5 steps. The first one is nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation is a process by which gaseous nitrogen is transformed to ammonia through biological fixation or nitrate. Through high energy physical process, gaseous nitrogen can be converted directly into nitrate through processes that exert a tremendous amount of heat, pressure and energy such as combustion, volcanic action, lightning discharges and industrial means. However, a large amount of biologically available nitrogen is naturally created through the biological fixation of nitrogen to ammonia and ammonium. A small group of bacteria known as rhizobium that live in nodules of the roots of legumes and some other woody plant are capable of breaking bonds among the molecule nitrogen and combine it with hydrogen using the enzyme nitrogenase. Nitrification. Nitrification is a two-step process in which ammonia is converted to nitrate. First, the soil bacteria Nitrosomonas and Nitrococcus convert ammonia to nitrite, and then another soil bacterium Nitrobacter oxidizes nitrite to nitrate. These bacteria gains energy through these conversions, both of which require oxygen to occur. Assimilation. In the assimilation process, plant and animal incorporate the nitrate and ammonia formed through nitrogen fixation and nitrification. Plant take these forms of nitrogen by their roots and integrate them into plant protein and nucleic acid. After assimilation, animals are then capable to use nitrogen for the plant tissues. Ammonification. Ammonification is the process in which microorganisms such as bacteria break down organic nitrogen, include protein and amino acid, into ammonia. The ammonia produced by this process is excreted into environment and is then available for either nitrification or assimilation. Denitrification. Denitrification is the conversion of nitrate to gaseous nitrogen by anaerobic bacteria. This process only occurs with the little or no presence of oxygen, such as deep in the soil near the water table. Hence, areas such as wetland provide a valuable place for reducing excess nitrogen level via denitrification processes. Oxygen cycle. Oxygen plays a significant role in the biosphere and is very essential element for the living organism because it supports life. Oxygen gas make up about 30% of Earth and about 21% of the air in the Earth's atmosphere. Oxygen forms about 70% atom in the living and plays a major role in the formation of carbohydrates, fats and proteins. It is required for the respiration process by animal including man. Sources of oxygen. Green plants. One of the major sources of oxygen are green plants that produce oxygen by photosynthesis. Atmosphere. Some oxygen is produced when sunlight reacts with water vapor in the atmosphere. Step of oxygen cycle. Photosynthesis. During the daytime, green plants take energy from the sun, carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil and make glucose, which is their food. This process is called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is also done in the marine environment by phytoplanktons. Photosynthesis is also done in the marine environment by phytoplankton. In the process of photosynthesis, oxygen is released into the air as a byproduct. During the night, this process is reversed as plants take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. To uphold their metabolism, that is why sleeping under a tree during night is not advisable. Respiration. The oxygen that is released by plant is used by human, animal and other organism for respiration. Animals use oxygen to break down simple sugar and generate energy to sustain themselves. During the respiration process, animals take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide into the air. Repeat. This carbon dioxide is again taken up by plant for photosynthesis. Phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is the second most important element in the biosphere and found on the earth in different compound forms such as the phosphate ions. Located in water, soil and sediment, phosphorus is found in phosphate rock and is entered into the environment cycling through water, soil and sediment. Phosphorus cannot be found in air and in the gaseous state like other compound of biogeochemical cycle. The phosphorus cycle is the slowest of the biogeochemical cycle. Importance of phosphorus for animal and plants. Phosphorus is the most essential for the growth of the organism and being found in the soil in very small quantity, it often limits plant growth. Animals take up phosphate by eating plants or plant eating animals. Phosphorus is a crucial nutrient for both animal and plants. It plays an important role in cell development and is a key component of molecule that stores energy such as ATP, DNA and lipids. Deficiency of phosphorus in the soil can end up in a decreased crop produce. Step of phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus moves in a cycle through rock, water, soil, sediment and organism. Here are the key steps of the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus enters the soil and water through rain and weathering that causes phosphate rocks release phosphate ion and other mineral. These phosphate ions are then distributed in soil and water. Plants take up phosphate ions from the soil. The plant may then be consumed by herbivorous animals. These animals are further consumed by carnivores. In this way, in the plant or animal, the phosphate is included in organic molecules such as DNA and lipids. This phosphate that is absorbed by the animals are returned to the soil through excretion and from decay and decomposition of plant and dead material by bacteria and is released out to the environment by this process. The phosphate in the soil is leached out or eroded into water and is eventually reached to oceans. The phosphate in the water is again used by algae and plant as nutrients. Sulphur cycle. Sulphur is the Earth's most abundant element in the universe and is an essential part of all living matter like nitrogen and carbon. Sulphur is one of the components that make up protein and vitamins. Protein consists of amino acid that contains sulfur atoms. Sulfur is important for the functioning of protein and enzymes in plants and in animals that depend upon plant for sulfur. Sources of sulfur. Most of the Earth's sulfur is tied up in rock and salts or buried deep in the ocean in oceanic sediments. Sulfur can also be found in the atmosphere. It enters the atmosphere through both natural and human sources. Natural sources can be, for instance, volcanic eruption, bacterial processes, evaporation from water, or decaying organism. Human sources can be burning of fossil fuels that release oxides of sulfur in the atmosphere. Sulfur occurs as elemental sulfur also. Step of sulfur cycle. The sulfur cycle involves both atmosphere and terrestrial processes. As the main source of sulfur are rock, the cycle begins with the weathering of rock, releasing the stored sulfur. The sulfur then comes into contact with air where it is combined to oxygen and becomes sulfate. The sulfate is taken up by plant and microorganism and is converted into organic forms. Animals then consume these organic forms through food they eat, thereby moving the sulfur through the food chain. As organisms die and decompose, some of the sulfur is again released as a sulfate and some enter the tissue of microorganism. Biogeochemical cycles are one of the immense importance as an ecosystem survives by combination of energy flow and matter recycling. It is a form of natural recycling that allows the continuous survival of ecosystem and its pathways by which nutrients flow between the abiotic and biotic compartments of the earth. It also regulates the element necessary for the life on earth by cycling them through the biological and physical aspects of the world. Thank you.